let me tell you my story. It all starts on September 23rd, 1998 in South Hero, Vermont. A small town of less than 1,000 people where the main money makers are cows and maple syrup. I was adopted at birth by a woman named Janet Ellis, but my story begins before that. You see, my parents were unable to take care of me, and because of that, they would do drugs and they would steal things to support their habit. And my mother had 4 kids taken away from her, she thought, before me and my brother were born. So she thought the best way for her to stop that from happening would be to have a drug overdose with drugs and alcohol. Glad to know it didn't work, and that's why I'm here today to tell you my life story. Growing up in Vermont was pretty easy. My family was wealthy, my mother worked for the government at the time, and things were pretty good. Until, that is, September 11th, 2001, the day where everything changed. On 9/11, my mother got a call. She was told to grab a van and head down to the World Trade Center. When she got there, it was destruction, it was mayhem. I don't want to say what happened that day in explicit detail because I'm pretty sure we all know what happened that day. But it changed my mom forever, and my life was changed forever. After 9/11, my mother, she went to a shrink, and the shrink told her that the person she was before 9/11 will never be the same person again after 9/11. And she was told to grab a picture of herself before the event, put it in a box, and then bury it. And that's what she did. She went to our farm in Vermont, right there where our house was, and she dug a hole. She put her picture of her uniform in the box, and she buried it. And it's still there. After 9/11, things were hard. My family began to lose money due to the fact that my mom had to take immediate disabled leave and never work again. So things were spiraling down out of control until my brother was diagnosed in 2003 with autism. And that was by far one of the hardest things. You'll see in my life that I deal with things that progressively get harder until they climax, and that was one of those things that was hard. And so I looked at myself and I'm like, I don't want to be like him, because I noticed how he was before and how he was after was extremely different. He lost the ability to speak. He lost the ability to effectively communicate, and he would often lash out violently because he was unable to communicate. And so I really wanted to distance myself from that until, again, in 2005, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I was one step closer to that fear of being like my brother. And I let myself be labeled as ADHD. I let myself be labeled as dumb. I let myself be labeled as someone who could never rise above being other than a kid with ADHD. And then in 2006, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, a syndrome that is in the field of autism. And I simply did not believe the fact that I was diagnosed with that disability. And for a long time, I did not believe it. Then, as life progressively got worse, and I put labels on myself, and things got harder and harder, in 2009, I was sexually abused, and I was to the point of breaking. And it got to the point where my mom said, you know what, Danny, do you want to move to Hawaii? Because at the time, when my mother worked for the government, she traveled a lot. And because of that, she would often go to Hawaii, and she would befriend the people here, she would make good conversation with the people here, and she found that Hawaii would be the best place for us. And when we moved to Hawaii, things were good. I thought I was living in paradise. But as many of the people that live here know, being an outsider living in Hawaii and going to, say, a public school or a place where outsiders aren't really welcome was hard for me. So I was discriminated against because of the way I talked. I was discriminated against because of the way that I walked. I was discriminated against because of this plethora of things. And it got to the point in 2012 that I decided that I wanted to end my life. And that was the day that I walked into my kitchen and I began to make that decision until I stopped myself. And I said, you know what, Danny? You've been going through life as a victim your whole life. And now is the time for you to change that. So I put down the knife and I started to think what I could do in my life that would be a vocation and to help others who've been like in bad situations like me. And I went through that a few years and I was still pretty depressed, but I met a kid. His name is Alexander. He's the founder of Hawaii Leaders Corps. And he came to me one day. He was kind of known as the all-ball kid at school because he himself was diagnosed with ADHD. He himself was diagnosed with dyslexia. So he was discriminated against as well. And he came to me and he said, "Danny, do you want to go to San Diego with me?" "What?" "Danny, do you want to join the Hawaii Leaders Corps?" "What?" And so I found myself judging the appearance at first, but I was like, okay, San Diego sounds pretty cool. So I went with Alexander Nudo and the Hawaii Leaders Corps to Global Youth Leadership Summit, which is a Tony Robbins event, and there things changed. I learned how to become a better leader. I learned how to better affect my community in positive ways rather than being the victim. And there was this one night where we were sitting in a circle in our dorm with all my other male counterparts, and it was the emotional day. It was the day where you made that breakthrough. And I saw one kid from a third world country. He stood up and he said, "You know, my family beats me because I am the smallest and I am the youngest." And he was able to make that breakthrough. And I saw another kid. He stood up and he said, "You know what? I've been living life horribly because I've treated my family horribly and I feel like my family hates me." And he was able to make that breakthrough. And another boy stood up, another boy. And so finally it came to me, and I stood up and I said, I don't want to feel like a victim. I don't want to be around negative people. I don't want to be around all these things that are making me feel horrible. And so finally the moment was that the men in the room talked me down and they said, "You know what, Danny? It doesn't matter how you look at things. You can treat a bad thing to happen in your life as a gift and an opportunity for success." And that's what I did. And I stood up and all my brothers came to me and they hugged me with love. And that was the critical moment. That was the climax in which I finally was able to go out and change lives. And from then on, I joined the Hawaii Leaders Corps in a more productive way. I've gone to London. I've gone to California, specifically in Orange County in LA, attending seminars to better yourself as a human being. And if it wasn't for me getting to that climax and realizing that my life is in my hands, I wouldn't be here today. I seriously would not be on this earth if it wasn't for Hawaii Leaders Corps, if it wasn't for all these things that brought me to this point. And I want to tell you one thing that you will take away is that in life, you have opportunities to be a victim, but those same opportunities are to be a powerful and empowered person that can change the world. And I want to let you know that today is the day that you can start making those choices to go out in the world and see things the way you see fit. Thank you.